Earth's ascension, the shift in human consciousness, new Earth, cataclysm, ascension, spiritual awakening. We're going to talk about all that and more with Anne Tucker, who's back on the show. She was on the show with me before I went on this network in October 2023. One of the most profound, I think, shows that I've ever done. It stays with me because I speak to so many people. It stays with me. So I've got Anne back on the show, and we're going to talk about all that and more. Stay tuned.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello. Welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive. Always wonderful to be with you. And we are on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Networks on 107.7 and 105.3 FM syndicated radio, coming out of New Orleans and different places. Welcome back to the show, Anne Tucker. So great to have you back on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be with you again, Karen. Thank you.
Yeah, as I was saying at the beginning of this, you came on the show just before I went on the network, actually. And I was actually thinking of giving up the show because YouTube was killing me because I don't advertise on my YouTube channel. So for those people listening on YouTube, share the YouTube, get people to subscribe because I go backwards, whereas other people have millions and millions and millions of views, which delights me to no end. And Anne, you have been busy. You are everywhere. You are on every podcast show that spiritual podcast show. I'm like, man, she's busy.
It has been a busy time. It's true.
But I guess the angels want to get this message out. It's an important message. We're going to talk about it today. So as other people's are exploding, but you've got to sit through all these ads, as you're listening to someone tell their story or an experiencer or talk about ascension or spirituality, you're interrupted with car ads and insurance ads and fast food ads. And I just didn't want to do that. So I turned them all off, but YouTube killed me. And I thought to myself, well, I'm just not going to play this game. I'll just let the new kids on the block take over. And then Preston and Dolly asked me to come on the network. And so now we're getting almost 500,000 live listeners. So hello to everyone listening on the radio network. So great that you're tuning in. Let me tell you a little bit about Anne. As I said, she was on the show last time. Anne Tucker is a channel for information and healing from the Angelic Realm, serving as a trance channel for healing and wisdom from the Angel Collective. There's a few other people in the gang, the Mother of Creation and Yeshua, helping awakening souls take advantage of this time of rapid growth and ascension. She channels, enters a state, she allows the angels to speak directly through her, a trance state. The practical, poetic, and inspiring messages offer angelic guidance and healing frequencies that can help to prepare us and usher us through the planetary shift in consciousness. So last time we went a little bit over your, let me just see if I got this right. When I talk about you, I say, she used to be in the corporate world and she was doing great. She was like working for Google and all the big tech companies and making lots of money. Like this is my remembrance of what you talked about on the show, because I often talk about you. And then the angels came knocking.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you're one of the only people that I've ever had on the show that didn't have some drastic thing happen in order to have the spiritual way. They were just knocking and all this phenomena was happening.
Yeah.
And then you needed to explore it. So you quit work and explored it, right?
I mean, I did have a divorce, which was definitely like it did kind of, that I needed something, because I would say the first half of my life, yes, I was living a very conventional life. And I did have a very, successful career. I had life going and working for me. But the divorce was what I needed to kind of pull the rug out from underneath me. I think everybody needs that like we have to have that moment that makes us question our lives, like, to make us, we have to rethink all the things we've taken for granted. And when we do that, we have the opportunity to see ourselves. That was true for me. So that was what kind of kicked off the process. And then it was the unfolding kind of happened from there.
Yes, always, which is what we're going to discuss with, the coming earth changes. They've already happened, but always. I was listening to Penny Kelly on Emilio Ortez's show, and she said something right at the beginning. He said, "What are you excited about?" And she said, "I'm excited about the disruption in the world." And
Oh,
he's
interesting.
like, and she said,
What do you mean by that?
this was such a great example of what we're going to talk about today. She said, when I was a young naturopath, I learned all about health and diet and everything. And I went to my family and I said, you should look at this and you should do this and you should eat this and not eat that. And they all said, go away, leave us alone, stop hassling us. And she said, and then my father got cancer and he came to me and he said, what's all that stuff you told me?
Yes, exactly.
Right. And she said, when you're comfortable, you don't need to change. But when there is disruption and cataclysm, then you start looking at life really differently. And I think that's the message that the angels are bringing us, right?
Yeah, it is an interesting thing that humans don't like change, that if we can avoid it, we will avoid change. But what the angels say, which is actually hilarious, is that they say we don't like change, but we are in fact the frequency of change. That we walk into a room and we change the room. That everywhere we go, we are creating change. Like life never stays the same. If you ever go back to a place you lived 2 years ago, it doesn't look the same. You know what I mean? Like there's changes. Change is the only thing we can say is constant, is change. But it's hilarious that we try in the same way we try to avoid ourselves in so many ways. We also try to avoid change. Yeah.
So there's people saying g'day for online. Vladdy and Heidi, hi. Morning. Alison says morning, ladies. Morning in Australia.
Good morning.
Obviously.
So nice to have them joining us live. That's so fun.
Afternoon in the US. I think you're in Pacific time, so it's about 3:30 in the afternoon. For you. Okay, so where do we want to go from here? Do we want to go over your story, or shall I send people to our last conversation? What do you think?
Whatever you feel called to. I'll follow your lead, Karen. You be the brave leader, and I will follow you.
I'll be the brave leader. Thanks, darling. Well, assuming we've got a newer audience listening than in 2023, we'll go over your story a little bit, how the angels contacted you. Like when I listened to you and you say it's the angels, I said to my mob, I reverently call my guides my mob. There's more than just the angels talking through her. And then you updated your bio and you've added a few collectives. So tell us a little bit about how you really started to trust the messages coming through you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It was a journey. And I would say, like I mentioned before, like I was living a very conventional life. I would say that I've always been myself. I've always been, I would say, a kind person, a loving person, but a very asleep person. I was not, my technique for dealing with the traumas or the difficulties of my life was to leave my body, to go back there somewhere. So people would say, oh, you're so cool and collected in a crisis. It's just because I wasn't there. I was out of my body. I was not facing my feelings. My heart was closed. And that wasn't because I was a bad person. It wasn't because I did anything wrong. It was a coping strategy, which so many of us have from the difficulties that are really the things that were too hard to feel when we were too young to process it, when we really were not equipped with the tools to face the things that felt really difficult to us as young children. So because of that, I, closed my little heart up like a clam, and I was kind of moving through life, not wanting, doing a lot of avoidance, not seeing, to the point where I closed down the circles I didn't want to see, closed my third eye, and then the gift of my divorce, and it truly was absolutely pre-planned. It's been shocking in so many ways to see the events of my life as they play out. I see them as I channel, I see them in my own history. I see them pop up in my children's dreams. I see the confirmations of the journey that we've traveled together. It's been fascinating to see that. It's more than just me. It's my whole family. I see how these ribbons thread through, but it served the purpose of shaking me loose from all of the places where I'd settled into the deep ruts, into the deep grooves, pulled me out and made me question things. And I'd say one of the first things that happened is I had a dream that was, I do get a lot of prophetic messages, but this was the first one that I could look at, and it really blew my mind. It was a dream. I saw myself in a park that I did not know with a man who was not my husband, but I knew he was my partner, but I couldn't see his face because it was fuzzed out. 2 children ahead of me who were not my children. They were not my actual children, but they felt like my children because I had to rush after them to make sure they would be safe on the play structure. And on my right, I saw a woman sitting at a picnic table with black curly hair, short hair, eating a sandwich with a bike leaning against the table. And there was something about this dream. I woke up from it and I thought, oh my gosh, there was something about it that just got me. And to the point where I told like 5 people this dream, like, what do you think it means? This dream was so weird. I don't know about it. You know, what did it mean? At the time I had it, I was still very much married. 5 years later, I'm very much divorced. I'm seeing someone new. He's up visiting with his 2 kids. We go to a park I'd never been to before. He's on my left. His 2 kids are in front of me going to the play structure. On my right is the woman with the hair and the sandwich. And exact. It wasn't like an approximation. It was a photograph of what I had seen. And it was like, this happened. And then it became thing after thing after thing, where it would be like where I would be having these visions and experiences. And it just lit a fire in me because it was by far the most exciting thing going on in my life. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was like, what is going on? So I was deeply curious about all this stuff. I had no idea why or what was going on. I wanted to learn. And I was in the middle at that time of a very successful career as an executive coach, working in some of the biggest companies in the US. I had access at the highest echelons of those companies. And you cannot be sitting in those boardrooms and then talk about angels. It's just not a done thing. Like at that time.
Not
yet. Oh, you know what just happened? Karen, you would not believe what just happened. I just got invited into a large company in the US as a speaker, and they had me channel at the end of our workshop. Yeah, blew my mind. Blew my mind. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So first time.
Wow.
And this is after me joking around for years that, it's a one-way ticket. I'll never go back. And then boom, there it was. And it was a very, very innovative company. And so it made sense, but it was like, okay, that was just a cool moment to say the world is changing. The world is changing. But I, at the time, I felt very strongly like it was a one-way ticket. And I asked myself, okay, if I was coaching someone else who was going through this and had this incredible, insatiable desire to learn and to figure out what was going on, what would my advice be? And it was, give it a year. Take a year and do it. Like, do it all. Like, do all the things. What would you do with a year? If someone gifted you a year to figure out your spiritual woo, what would it do? What would you do? And so for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to travel. I'm going to go to all the conferences and the events and I went to AEST and I went to channeling workshops and anything I could get my hands on. I booked sessions with hypnotherapists and I did everything. Yeah. And it was like the best decision ever. And it meant walking away from the work I was doing. And then at the end of that, I had opened the door enough that I was starting to get in touch with becoming a healer. And I decided, okay, I've gone this far, let's commit. And I became a full-time healer. And it was, you think about this, people say, oh, it's like, it is, like there's a lot of misunderstandings about people who take this path, that somehow they're doing it for like for a huge profit. I will tell you that the biggest thing everybody told me is you're crazy. You're going to leave this very successful, high paying work for something where you can't possibly earn a living. You can't possibly earn a living doing that.
Right. Yeah.
So it was a big risk, and I got a lot of pushback. But I will tell you that since then, I do support myself, and I support a team doing this work now. It is possible that when you embrace it fully, when you fully step into it, it is possible. The only thing preventing it is us, right? Is that belief that it's not. So, and I embrace it fully. I will tell anybody, literally, I will walk into my accountant's office and say, I channel angels. So
absolutely.
But absolutely. Yeah, it's been a journey though. And like all along the way, it's been a process of learning to embrace myself, learning to embrace the stuff that I would have thought was weird. Stuff that I would have questioned. I was always a logical, even I would say, a doubter, so trying to embrace miracles. I will tell you an amazing story, Karen. When one time I channeled a message where the angels told me that coming in the coming days, or in the coming years, as we're facing things that are difficult around the world, that they will have increasingly the ability to step in to help us in ways that could be miraculous. Like, basically, they're saying in the message that miracles will be increasingly possible. And I was like, isn't that nice? Like, isn't that just a nice thought that miracles are possible? But I didn't let it in here. I heard it, but I didn't, somewhere in me, that doubter's brain was in there going like, that would be so great. But, I'll just wait till I see it. So that night, I always channel the night before from my YouTube channel. I channel Thursday night and then I present on Friday. So from Thursday night, I go out to dinner and we walk by this really posh store. And I never go in there, but for whatever reason, I was like, oh, let's just go in. I'm going to feel the fabrics, and it's so beautiful. It's Italian. It's gorgeous. Let's just go touch the things. So I go in, and this really lovely lady, these two ladies were working, and they say, what do you do? And of course, they have like a 40% off, like secret rack in the back of the store. I would have never stayed if it hadn't been for the 40% off rack. And so I'm in, I'm actually looking, and the woman asked me, what do you do? And I said, well, I channel angels. And she gets kind of quiet, and she says, I've seen an angel. And she starts telling me this incredible story. And she's never told anybody this story, including the woman that was with her, who she's been working with for 15 years, had never heard the story. Had never heard the story. So what are the chances, number one, that I go into the store I never go to, that I stay long enough, right, to have the conversation, and then she feels open enough and safe enough to tell me. So she tells me the story that she was coming back. She was flying to the US. She had been, she was moving here from France. She had a tiny baby with her. She was like 20 something at the time. And she came in, she had problems with customs. She was late at night, and she ended up missing her flight. And she could not get a connecting flight out of there to where she was supposed to end up. And so she's trying to figure out what to do. She literally had $10 in her wallet and nowhere to go. And she ends up sitting on the floor as the airport closes around her, until finally that there's no ticketing agents, everything, the whole airport shuts down. And she's sitting there on the floor, and she's kind of crying, and she's got her infant, and she's trying to feed the infant. She feeds the baby, and then she just doesn't really know what to do. And after a little while, a woman comes over she's a ticketing agent, and she says, oh, are you okay? What's going on? And she says, well, and she explains what happened. And the woman says, you come with me. I'm going to help you. And she guides her back to a ticketing, and one of the ticketing desks. She opens it up. She goes in the back. She comes back with a bunch of papers. She hands her a free voucher for a shuttle to the hotel. She hands her a free voucher for the hotel, and she hands her a shuttle for the way home in the morning, way back to the airport. And she books her return flight. And she says, here you go. You have everything you need. You go have a good night. And the woman is like so relieved. She's crying, and she gets down, and she's picking up all her things, and she gets up to thank the woman, and she can't find her. She couldn't see her. She figures maybe she went back behind the desk again, but she doesn't see her again. So the next morning, after a lovely sleep in the hotel, she comes back. She hands the ticketing desk her pre-booked flight out. And the woman says, who booked this for you? And she says, well, the ticketing agent that was here last night. She says, there was no one here last night. And she says, yeah, she had short gray hair, and she described her. There was no one here that meets that description. No one.
Wow. Yeah.
And the woman knows that she met an angel. So here's what is so cool about this, is that on the day that I channel about miracles, and I'm having a hard time embracing the message, because there's some part of me that cannot yet accept, right? That cannot yet let that much love in. And then I get to live inside the miracle, because I get to go have an experience where I'm guided to hear another person's miracle story. So I brought that into my heart, and then I was able to share the message with conviction the next day. But how amazing is that? Miracle inside a miracle inside a miracle,
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Well, running this show for around 15 years, I've been privy to so many people's stories of miracles. And I have to say, I've had many, 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 many miracles. What does Marianne Williamson say? A miracle is a shift in perspective from fear to love. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. I think that, I was telling Anne before we came on, I was listening to her last message, and it was very much about being the deliberate creator. And I'm like, woohoo, this is what I teach, teaching people how to move out of fear and move into love. What is Moby saying here? Hello, darling. I've been having a difficult day, and this conversation is so uplifting. Oh,
good. I'm so glad.
And where was I? What was I just saying?
You were talking about conscious creation.
Oh yeah, and the message from your last channeling, I think the last one that you put up was very much about acceptance.
Yes.
And people think that conscious creation is about creating the life that we want, and really conscious creation is about creating the internal environment, the thoughts that we want, the feeling that we want, the state that we want, the frequency, the vibration that we want, regardless of what's happening. Regardless of what's happening. Because after I had you on the show in October 2023, you spoke about flooding, because it was very predictive. We'll go over some of Anne's predictions, but basically, in a nutshell, we went through 10 years of connecting with the angels and what they've been telling you. 10 years of what they've been telling.
They've been really speaking. I've been channeling as a trance channel since 2020, but before that I was channeling in other ways, but the trance channeling came in 2020.
Did that improve the messages or improve the way you received the messages? Like, what was the difference?
Absolutely. Like, it's been it's a thing where they never let me sit on my laurels. There's never a moment where they're like, good, you're done now. Like, you've learned enough, you've grown enough. Now you can stop. It's like, okay, now you're really good at that. You feel comfortable doing that. You're good at that. Now don't do it anymore. We're going to do it differently. So it got to a place where I was working, full-time as a healer, and I was channeling through various, clairvoyance and clairsentience and this kind of stuff. And I was feeling confident in what I was doing. I could go into a session and feel like, okay, I got this. And they were like, yeah, you're too comfortable. Okay, don't do that anymore. And they literally said, no more one-on-one sessions. They made me stop. They really stopped doing it. I'm like, oh my God, but that was how I was paying the bills. That's how I made my living. They're like, yeah, no more. And they didn't tell me what was next. They're like, you just have to stop doing that. And then once you do, and this is the part about deliberate creation, once you stop, once the energy gets still, once you allow things to settle and you create space for something new to come from it. And that is when it happened. That's when the trans-channeling came in. So it's like you have to get to the space of stillness. My favorite metaphor for it is this idea that when we are doing our thing, when we're out there trying and working and making and doing, it's like we are standing in the ocean about halfway up in the water and we're splashing, right? We're splashing all over. We're full of action. We're in our head, right? And then once we finally get to a space where we feel like we're done with that, whatever it is that we're doing, whatever lesson we're learning or thing we're building, or whatever it is, we finally get to the place of completion. When we finally stop and we get still and the water gets still, all of a sudden we can see below the surface and we realize, oh my gosh, there's an entire life down there. Like, there's so much happening beneath the surface. And it's when we get to the space of stillness, if we realize that what's underneath that is actually infinite potential, that anything, when we stop trying, then anything can rise from the infinite. And it is, but the challenge is we never get there. I heard this amazing thing, which really aligned beautifully with this, from some friends of mine, some people I met who channel the Pleiadians, and they're all about the Pleiadian calendar and aligns with the Mayan calendar. And they were talking about the magic of the number 13 and how in many cultures around the globe, we repress the number 13 to the point where it's the unlucky number. They don't even include in skyscrapers, they don't even include the number 13 in the elevator. Right?
Yeah.
It's like we don't even allow the number 13 to be. Well, in the Mayan calendar, the number 13 is the number of integration. It's the place of stillness. And if we never allow anyone to get there, then humanity cannot grow. We can't ever get to the space where we make space for something new to come in. We're just replaying our old stuff over and over and over again. Yeah. So it's that idea of, and that was why they said with the angels, and this has come up in my life. I will tell you, Karen, so often that every time they're ready for me to make a big change, they will just tell me to stop what I'm doing. And they won't tell me like what's coming next. I have to get to the space of stillness. And then once I do, and it will be a couple months, 2 months, sometimes 4 months of like just being, and then something new will bubble up from the infinite. And I'm in something brand new. But it could never come forward, never come through if I'm sitting there with all my expectations, all my judgments, all my ideas about the way things have to be, because all of those are limiters. All of those are referencing the past.
Yeah. I think many people hit that parts of their life, and they talk about it in my group, especially people have spoken about, sitting in uncertainty. I don't know what's coming next. And I've been talking, channeling, speaking with many people about this. And I always remember Deepak Chopra's words when I was a young student of spirituality. He was one of my teachers, not physically, but through his books. And
Nice.
he said, the wisdom of uncertainty, embrace the wisdom of uncertainty. And I don't know, to the young
You do
mind,
that very well. Like, I think he's here with me right now.
I think I've been Indian in a past life. I came back from India. I was in India for about a month with my ex-husband, and I couldn't stop wobbling my head. Anyway, it's like to the young mind of trying to always get to the next, what's next,
Yes.
embracing the stillness, and in that stillness, not knowing what's next, the uncertainty. It's difficult. It was difficult, and I never understood his message at the time I was reading it, but having lived it like a lot, I'm like, oh, I get it.
Yeah. It is so counterintuitive, because the human response when we don't know what's coming is we try to forecast or plan. We try, the idea is we try our best to create. We try to manifest whatever's going to come next. And manifesting is important in certain areas. Like when you're in the midst of a project, when you're trying to, it's like when you're in the middle of, but it's like when you get to the point of ready for change, when you're ready for the next thing, that's where the place of stillness is. Sort of like us with this great shift in consciousness is like, okay, humanity has had how many thousands of years to work through our stuff. And we've been working on this whole era of trying to understand ourselves through karmic experience, through projection of our subconscious mind into our reality and living ourselves. That's been the journey. But now we're coming to the conclusion of that. And we're supposed to return to the place of stillness, into this place where literally we have to become comfortable with not doing, with allowing, which is why they just keep this like a drumbeat, a mantra. They just keep telling us, release, allow, release, allow. It's the space of stillness we have to get to, so that so that we can let the new human, the new reality, our new state of consciousness rise. And this played out, like I'd say, another example of how this played out in my life. Like in my second marriage, I've had two. I like to joke around that I'm very worldly. I've had several marriages. It's only been two, but I like to exaggerate. All my marriages, there's only been two. But anyways, at the end of the second one, as it was coming to a close, I was really feeling the pressure of leaving that marriage. And but I was also really scared about, like, how am I going to support my kids? I had one kid entering college and the other kid not far behind. And I was really feeling a lot of pressure about, like, how, and it's really was up to me, how am I going to take care of my kids? Because at the time I was full-time healing. I hadn't figured it out. I hadn't cracked the nut yet of how to, like, have a consistent fluid source of income from doing that work. So I was really scared to leave, because I thought it meant I would have to give up the work of spirit and go back into the corporate world. And I didn't want to do that. I really didn't want to do that. I really felt like I was on my path. I wanted to stay on my path. So I was scared. And finally the message came from the angels, because I kept thinking, well, I can't leave this marriage because I have, it's like basically it creates financial chaos in your life. I can't leave until I get my healing business going. And finally the message came from spirit, and they said, your healing business cannot get going until you leave your marriage.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And it was that idea, you have to take the plunge. I always get that visual of, you ever seen the commercial, the Nestea plunge, where you fall backwards into the pool. It's like, you have to do the trust fall, and you have to be okay with not knowing and not having a plan. And literally, when you do that, you create the space of stillness for something better to come in.
Yeah. Powerful, powerful stuff. I've lived it so many times. I was a young healer in my 30s, in between husbands, actually, and really not making enough to pay the bills. And the ex-husband wasn't giving me any money, and it was drama. And I remember my guides, I was thinking, okay, I just have to get a job. I just have to get a job. And every part of me was like, get the paper. It was before the internet. Get the paper and find a job. And they were saying, relax and go to the beach. And I'm like, I can't relax. I've got to find some money. How am I going to find some money? How am I going to find some money?
Yeah.
They said, relax and go to the beach.
Go to the beach. I love it.
And then a girlfriend rings up and she says, do you want to come to the beach? And I'm like, are you serious? And I thought to myself, every part of me was like, no, screaming, no, I've got to find a job. I've got to find some money. And I thought, oh, listen, I'll just I'll go. Anyway, so she had a client that had become a friend, and she'd inherited a lot of money. And my guides had also said, whatever you do, don't speak about your problems, don't speak about your predicament, and don't ask anyone for money. And so I listened, and she was insisting when we're at the beach, how's your business going? Are you making money? And I said, I'm having a big lesson in trust at the moment, was what I just kept saying.
That's a great way to say it. It really is. It's a great way to say it.
Long story short, she insisted on giving me some money. So she gave me about $5,000, which covered all the bills. It didn't leave anything left over, but it was just like I refused the money, and she insisted, and she didn't lend it to me. She just gave it to me. And
oh my gosh,
I have so many stories like that when you just listen to that guidance, when you stop trying to make it happen, and you let go, let go and let God, as they say.
Yeah.
Hi, Diane. How are you? She's online. How are you? And what's Moby saying here? How do you know if the impulse to do something is coming from a divine place and not like a lower state, like exhaustion, wanting to escape, or something else? That's a great question.
It really
Moby.
is.
Yeah.
I love that question. And I would say that the language of the heart never speaks fear. That if you are doing something to get away from something, that is the head, that's logic, that's the mind working around itself, that the heart only leads towards wanting to feel good. The heart leans towards joy. So if you're talking yourself, it's not that fear is an emotion we feel, but when we are leaning into fear, that is our logic mind. When we are in our heart, we are moving towards what is it that you want to achieve, to do? What is it that's going to light you up? And it really is, where is the joy? So if it's just to escape something, that's fear, right? That's going to be leaning into the head. That's trying to figure our way through. That's going back into all of our learned behavior about, wow, last time I did this, I had this horrible experience. I'm not going to do that again. I had a bad relationship. I'm not going to do that again, right? That's fear. Whereas you say, where's my heart? Where's my joy? Well, my joy is, well, I love spending time with other people, so I'm going to try again. That's my heart. My heart feels the joy. It says, well, I'm going to lean into the joyful experience. And we say all this stuff. It doesn't mean that there's not value in the head or in showing up and trying and working hard. All those things are needed, but there's a stage and a phase for everything. There's a stage for divine aligned action, but it comes after the direction rises from the stillness, right? We have to allow the inspiration to come in and then to move into it. And then once we're in it, then we flow with it from the space of divine aligned action.
Absolutely. The impulse
Would you agree,
arises.
Karen?
Absolutely. The impulse arises from the stillness. Absolutely. I think that, my guides really came online after years of meditation. I just knew that meditation was the go, which is what you're talking about. It's just like sitting in stillness. And my mum died of cancer when I was a teenager. And so I looked into healing from that time. And when I found people talking about meditation, I found so many people, Hay House. What was her name? God, I've gone blank on her name. She has Hay House. Anyway, and there was a teacher. Go on.
I was just about to say it, and then I caught your mind fart. I can't remember.
Oh, sorry, mind fart. Okay. And Patricia King.
It's wonderful. Like everybody knows who you're talking about.
Like so many people who had terminal cancers and illnesses. Louise Hay, thank you. Louise. Who talked about the stillness, and I remember as a younger healer just thinking, well, that's the message. If I'm ever diagnosed with some terrible illness, I just got to get really still. Mm-hmm. Like forget going to the doctor and having a million tests and all that. Just leave your life and get really still. To me, I find like in any dilemma, that's the answer.
Yeah,
that's the answer.
Yeah. I agree.
So Sherry's here. Hello, Dying One. Hello, Karen and Anne. Love Louise Hay. Yeah, Louise Hay. Thanks, Sherry. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the help.
There's a bit of a delay between us speaking and getting the messages. But yeah, so last time we spoke on the show, you spoke about the earth changes, which we'll go over again, not to frighten people, but to we're going to explain this, but to sort of help people prepare, not in the like stacking cans of soup prepared sort of way, but prepare consciously, like get still, be in acceptance, know that you are the creator of your internal world and thus your external world through the power of thought and connection to source. But you spoke about the water, like you spoke about flooding across the world, and you said it's not like sort of the Noah's Ark story where the whole world floods, which is the story. I don't know if it happened like that, but there will be a lot of flooding. And, you know, like 2 weeks after our conversation, there were mass floods in Australia, and my daughter was caught in them, and there has continued to be mass flooding. Every time there's a flood in Australia, it's the worst flood Australia's ever seen. So a few months back in central Queensland, which is a state on the east coast of Australia, the desert was flooding, and like hundreds of thousands of heads of cattle were drowned because just swept away. And then just recently, just now, they're cleaning up now, like the state that I'm in, central New South Wales, have had the worst flood of Australia. So it just continues. And every time something happens like this, I keep thinking of you. I'm like, oh my God, Ed was right.
I should have said something more cheerful so you'd think of me when good things happen. But yeah, you're right.
And like the water, because I remember you talking about the water, and and I've never seen more, because I live in Sydney, and there has been a lot of floodings here, but not in my suburb. But I've never seen more rain than in the last year and a half. Like it's been unbelievable. It's been unbelievable. And as I
and
say,
it's around the globe. It's been like amazing, like unprecedented floodings. And so it's and so that is like when the angels tell us to have a way to purify our water. That it is the reason for it is that when there's a flood, often it contaminates the water supply, and so we need a way. And there's the potential for the spread of disease through water. So like think of like typhoid was the message that I got, and I Googled it, like what causes typhoid? They're like, it's waterborne illness. And the angels have been like, have a way to get viruses out of your water. And you don't want to be stuck with boiling. There's this is not at all to cause fear. It's just the same kind of thing you would do if you were listening to the advice from the Red Cross that they tell every household should have these basic things that you have, because in the event that, who knows, it happen. They clearly said not everything will happen everywhere. None of these things may affect you, but it's a good idea to have on hand, because what if it just so happens that it affects you, and then you'll be glad you did. But you can have, there's even like very inexpensive, like $7 little kits you can buy with these little tablets you drop in water, and they kill any bacteria that happen to be in there. And it's easy peasy. You just stick them in a drawer somewhere, but you want a way to clean your water. And it's just like I said, 10 seconds of planning, and it may be the thing that you're glad you have. We were shocked when like some of the events that hit here in the US, like in the American South. And we've got a lot of people who follow on my YouTube channel all throughout it. And we have a lot of people in Australia as well, but in the US a lot. And people, like when there was this huge storm that hit Asheville, North Carolina, and all the things that the angels have been saying, like, please have a way to clean your water. Please have small bills of cash on hand, not like the money to pay your rent. Because if things are chaotic, no one's going to be collecting rent. It's literally so that you can go buy some ice to keep your food from spoiling, and so that you can buy some gas. Because when these kind of things happen, the payment processing will not work. All the stuff stops working, and the only way you can buy a loaf of bread is if you have 20 bucks. And if you have low bills, you have to, and who carries $5 bills at home anymore? Nobody does, because you only get 20s or 50s out of the cash box. You just have to think about it in advance. Have a little stash of like low, but it doesn't have to be a lot, enough to get you by. And then you just do it once, you never think about it again. But those are the people that reached out and said, this simple suggestion changed my entire experience. And this has come from the people who were in the Los Angeles fires, the people who were in the store. Like, we have so many people who've emailed us saying, thank you so much for these simple things, because they completely changed. People in Texas during the massive blackouts, same thing. They're like, oh my word, if I did not have this, I would have had a horrible experience. So anyways, it's just simple things you can do. Clean your water. Like I said, those little tablets are really cheap, but you can also go, do it based on your comfort level, what you want to get, just whatever solution. Make sure it will clean your water of virus. And then low bills, have cash on hand, enough to buy like gas, bread, whatever you want, little things. Don't worry about paying your rent. That's not the issue. It is just for getting your basic needs met. And stuff like that.
Yeah, I was telling Anne before I wanted to talk about this. So I had a comment in my group from one of the people in my group. It says, "Hi Karen, I see you have Anne Tucker on again. I really like her. However, I don't listen to any predictions anymore from anyone. I'm making my own reality, or at least trying to. The more we tune in to probability or something is more likely to occur." Yes. So this is something that I teach to you. Like, we're the creators of our reality. Esther Hicks talks about this too. Like, don't look at the terrible things that are going to happen, because like, as you focus on something, you'll create it. The more you focus on it, you'll create it. And so I looked at that comment and I thought, yeah, that's true. It's something I'll discuss with Anne. But just after that, I was scrolling through Instagram, and I'm going to add to the stage. I'm going to show, and I saw this.
Yes.
And it is the glacier collapse in Switzerland, and it was like my jaw just dropped, because look at this thing. For people on radio, go look at it on a search engine, put in glacier collapse. It's just happened, I think, on the 29th of May. I mean, it's just enormous. My jaw was just dropping, thinking, oh my God, look at this thing. And of course, we're saying don't look at it. But then I read more about it, and they knew that it was going to collapse. They could see that the glacier was unstable. And so they evacuated the whole town, 300 people that lived in this beautiful little Swiss village. They evacuated. But not only did they evacuate the people, they evacuated all the animals, as many of the wildlife as possible, all the pigs and the cats and the dogs, and everyone was taken out about 3 days before that happened. And that speaks to that preparedness, like when you know something's going to happen, you can take measures to make it less cataclysmic. And that was such a great example of reading that comment and then seeing that, and then reading that no one got hurt, like not one person died in that incredible disaster. And I'm like, wow.
It is. I mean, I'm so glad you shared that, Karen. So it's interesting. The last couple of days, the angels are last couple of weeks, the last few messages that I've shared from the angels, they've been talking about some of the fact that the earth herself is going through a change, that the whatever is going on in terms of her healing, the earth is her own sentient being. She's a consciousness herself, and she is ready to shift to a higher frequency. But as part of that, in the same way that we have emotions that come up to the surface that we have to release, so does she. And that's got to go somewhere, right? And so it's not that it's not a judgment. It's not anything meant to hurt humanity. The fact is that she's got stuff that needs to rise to the surface. And the good news in it is that when or if this happens, that it means that the earth will be moving into a higher vibration, and that then benefits us. That at the net result of the shift of her doing this, or whatever comes up, and yes, it could be volcanic, yes, it could be earthquake, that the net result is that all of a sudden the earth is a more peaceful, a better place, right? It is a place of a higher frequency. So, but the angels also said, so that, and yes, there's a whole thing about, like, we don't want to focus on negativity. We don't want to focus on fear. When they share their messages with us, they are very, very careful to try to share them in a way that eliminates fear. And they share more messages about how to deal with fear, like how to not be in fear. Like, they absolutely don't want to create fear, because that is the kind of thing that, you're right, you don't want to start creating chaos in your life. But the way I think about it is, why do they tell us this stuff? Is that, imagine that you had a really, really close friend, someone that you had a very close relationship with, and they knew that something bad was coming down the pike that was going to affect you. And how would you feel if that bad thing happened to you and your friend knew and they never told you? What would that do to your trust or your faith in that relationship? So they have a certain degree, a certain level of, they have an understanding of the level of relationship they want to have with us. And they know that part of that is based on trust, that they need to share with us. They don't tell us in such specificity that it creates visuals in our mind, right? They're not telling us it's going to happen at 3 p.m. on Tuesday and it's going to have this. They're kind of telling us generally, this is the kind of stuff that could happen. And here is what you can do. Here are the simple steps you can take to make sure that if this happens where you live, you'll be all right. And then they are quick to say, not everything that they've said happens everywhere. Maybe that none of the things they've mentioned happen where you are. Maybe only one of them happens where you are. They've said that, yes, in terms of like, for example, supply chain disruption, what they've talked about, they said it's not that there won't be anything, it's that there won't be everything, right? They say they're always clear to say there's always a pathway through. And then they followed, I think it was the second message they gave just like a week or so ago was beautiful, is that they said that even when you say, for example, you do live in an area where there is flooding, like you were talking about, Karen, they said that we don't understand how incredibly powerful we are as creators. And that even when the world outside is chaos, we do still have the ability to influence our direct experience. That when we are manifesting, so to a degree, the collective manifests for the whole of mankind. But what about you? And what are you creating in your life? So getting into the space of allowing, of understanding what's happening with the earth, of being compassionate. If you do have a giant, if there is an earthquake, if there is a big volcanic eruption, rather than going into fear, if you can imagine the earth as like a toddler going through a tantrum that needs to let the energy out, just let it fly. And if you just imagine yourself as like the doula, like seeing the earth through this shift, and try to be allowing and understanding and gracious about what's happening. When you do that, you're in this lovely space of peace, and you're not attracting any of that chaos into your immediate experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, years ago, I contacted an Aboriginal spirit. I'd held this question about why is Australia so dry, and like I'd flown over the States, and it's so lush. I mean, when you fly over the States, and you look out of the plane, it's so beautiful. You fly over Australia, you just see red, like red.
Wow,
it's amazing.
Wow.
It's amazing. So I'd held this question anyway. I was doing some activations in the graveyard with someone once, and this Aboriginal spirit came to me and said, there's a reason for that. We have purposely made Australia less inhabitable for humans because we didn't really want a lot of population on this land in your current consciousness.
Wow.
And when your consciousness shifts, the land too will change. And in years to come, like probably in thousands of years to come, they didn't give me a time. They said Australia will be one of the most populated places on the planet, and it will look totally different. And then as I've watched these floods, especially a few months ago when the desert was flooding and all the poor cattle were getting, taken away with the flooding, I thought about the re-irrigation of the desert has begun.
Wow.
It's begun.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Because they talked about the desert will be re-irrigated, like water will arise, like water will come and re-irrigate and change the desert, will change the land mass. But I'm thinking this is in hundreds of years. But just watching the floods and in the desert, that's never happened in Australia before.
Wow.
And so it's upon us. The earth changes are upon us.
Yes.
And we are in the middle of it. And as I think of the soul, because we're not just this one life, we're a soul living multiple lives.
Yes.
As we look back on this time that we were on the planet, and we can see the future time where the planet has totally transformed, we can sort of pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, I was there.
Yes.
I saw it. I was a part of all that.
It's a big deal actually to be the witness, is that it's because it is a healing journey for the earth and also for humanity. And what the pathway through to healing is to be witnessed, right? Is to have another person bear witness to what has been our trauma, our pain, all that stuff. So we being here as light workers to witness the change of the earth is actually doing healing. We are helping to heal the earth simply by witnessing and what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think for many, the journey is the accelerated spiritual journey, ascension journey. Because just like we spoke about with Penny Kelly, when we're so comfortable, nothing changes.
Yeah.
But when we bump up against the contrast, as Esther Hicks would say, as we bump up against the traumas in our lives, we start to live and think differently. Yeah, to live and think differently. What is Heidi saying here? Heavy rains after wildfire burns, scars causes flooding quick. We get that here. Where's here, Heidi? Where are you in the world? Yeah, contrast. What are you saying here, Charlotte?
I like the good feeling.
I like the good feeling.
And that's it. Follow the good feelings, right? Yeah. Follow the good feelings.
Yeah. So to go back to what Penny Koenig said on Emilio's show, like, get excited about the disruption rather than trying to stop it by not focusing on it, because that's fear too. If I don't want to focus on what's possible with the earth changes, if I only look at good things, that's really, you're running on fear rather than saying, and I get this image of Jim Carrey in that movie that he was in, where he was in that dome environment and he was trying to escape. And he's in the boat, and the guy who's playing the God character is turning up the sea and trying to sort of get him off the boat. He ties himself to the boat and he looks up and he says, "Bring it on!" Bring it on! I can take it. I feel like that's the attitude. It's like, bring it on! I know how to handle it.
Yeah. It is interesting. It really makes me think of something else the angels have said, which is that part of how we are meant to move through it is to become okay with what is. Like, we hear a lot about to accept, but I think people a lot of times get upset about the idea of accepting what is, because of the fact that there's a lot of things in the world that we think, if I don't fight that, then, like, what about, like, for example, like the horrible of the horrible, like children in pain, children being hurt. Like, if I don't fight that, like, I can't just allow that to be. If we say, you're talking about allow, how could I possibly allow the horrible things in the world to happen, right? I have to be the warrior that's going to make it better. And what the angels would say is that, like, in all things, it's an internal job. Everything is an internal job. And when we talk about allowing, we're not talking about liking it. We're talking about understanding that it's true. And this, for me, is a major shift in our how we face what's going on in the world. Is that if we understand that deep down, we all understand that we know in our heart of hearts, we know that we're divine beings, and we know where we came from. Somewhere deep down, we know it. And when we came to this earth, and bad things happened to us, and people were not nice to us, and it was really hard for us to accept that. As a matter of fact, the thing that's going on in our heart is I can't believe it. I can't believe that person or this horrible thing happened to me, right? How did that possibly happen? Like, because you know that you're a light soul, you know what you feel and how badly it hurt. And we just get to a space where it's like we're stunned. We're in disbelief about the worst trauma is that sense of disbelief of, like, I just cannot wrap my head around the fact that this happened. And so then that puts us in the space of not believing it. And so we go out and we look for some resolution to that. We look for someone to say, I'm sorry, but that I'm sorry never actually makes it feel any better, because there's still the piece of us that says, I can't believe it happened. What we really need is for our own self to turn around and say, you're speaking to your inner child and holding that inner child and saying, not only did it happen, but it was worse than you're remembering. It was awful. It was terrible. And I will be with you through it, right? I will love you even though that terrible thing happened. I will love you through that terrible thing. I will be with you through that terrible thing. It happened. And all your feelings are valid, right? Your feelings are real. And that just, it settles us. And so when we are out in the world, people have, just all of us, you've heard of the fight or flight, right, response to things. There's those of us who are the flighters, who run away. We feel those feelings come up, those feelings of, like, I can't believe this horrible thing happened. And what we do is we push it down and we push it. The last thing we want to do is face it. And there's other of us who are the fighters. So what they do is they turn around and they look for that event, that experience, those feelings to happen out in the world. And they might say, look at those children being hurt over there, because that was like me. And I'm going to fight it so it doesn't happen again. So when that happens, you get engaged in this game of tug of war, of energetic tug of war, of I am going to resist. I'm going to resist you. And when we resist it, what we're doing is actually putting more energy into that system. We're perpetuating the system energetically. Whereas if we can get to the space of healing, which is to say, I don't like it, never going to like it, but I understand that it's true, that is really happening, and it is as bad as I think it is, and it's true. And I'm going to love myself, and I'm going to love humanity anyways. When we do that, all the energy falls out of the system. And that is actually the space towards peace. That's a space towards healing.
So powerful, Anne. Absolutely. So powerful. It's exactly what my mob teach, and it's so great to reiterate this on this show. Like, I'm hoping that this show, really hammers that message home. Vladdy said to me, Vladdy said to us, it was the Truman Show. Thank you, Vladdy. With Jim Carrey, and he says that he needed to hear that today. Yeah, and Diane reminds us what we resist persists.
Yes, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And it's so lovely to have that. What we resist persists. I think it's so true. Yeah.
And
And I love
Susan
Susan
says,
is saying our personal
yeah.
healing helps Gaia release old energies and vice versa. Yes, absolutely. So when we work on ourselves, we help everyone. It is like the number one best thing we can do to help the world is to work on ourselves. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, so beautiful. We're going to get more into this, but I have to do a station ID break because I forgot. God, an hour has gone so quickly already. You're listening to ATP Media. Where am I? Who am I? Accentuating the positive and expanding and awakening consciousness on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM, syndicated radio all over the place, coming out of New Orleans. And we're talking with, where are we? We're talking with Ann Duncan today. Yay. As I say, she was on the show at the end of 2023. And I have had so many people, because I've been doing the show for about 15 years. And before that, I've probably for about 25 years showcasing new world teachers and events and stuff like that. I've spoken to many people, but during that show I did with you, I'd heard a lot of predictive stuff, a lot. But when you were talking, Anne, I was just getting full body shivers. And I remember you looking at me going, I know it's a lot, right? Because I was having a visceral reaction to what you were saying. So afterwards, I chatted to my guides and I said, what was that all about? And they said, well, you can talk about creating the utopian earth and you're going to move through this transition smoothly. But is that really the sort of person that you are? Is that the timeline you're on? And I said, no, I'm a healer. I'm a rescuer. I'm somebody that likes to try and I've heard you say that, like a problem solver. So if I'm going to pick a timeline, it's probably going to be a timeline where that is needed, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a juicier timeline, I will tell you, because it's just like you were saying, is like when we put ourselves in difficulty and we have to face ourselves and like we grow brighter as a soul. So this is definitely like to be going through here, to be here. Like this is where the action is, like right here where, yes, there's all this polarity and chaos and craziness. And guess what? This is like, we are going to come out of this. Our souls are going to be so bright and shiny. It's going to be like, where did you go? What kind of crazy school did you go to? We went to the Earth School. Yeah. And we were here for this.
We were here for that. Yeah, exactly. Looking back on the evolution of Earth's, planetary system and how it moved into how it changed yugas and changed eras. And we can sort of say, I was there for that. I saw that. But my daughter is somebody who's a healer as well, but she's very into learning about not just healing people in their consciousness, but being there for people who are in trauma. And she's been through the fires and the floods. And she was upset one day because often when her house burns down or her house is flooded, she's not there. Like she's physically not there. And she was saying to me that she was upset. And I said, what are you upset about that it happened? She said, no, I'm upset that I wasn't there. And I said, why? And she said, because I've trained for this, Mum. I've trained.
My God.
I know. She's done all her rescue this and that. And she volunteers for the rescue service that rescues boats out on the ocean and stuff like that. Like she's really into the rescue story. And I, again, thought about you. You've been on my mind a lot since I last got And I started telling her what you said. And I said, maybe you're obsessed with rescuing people, because there will come a time when all those skills that you have will be really needed. I mean, okay, you've missed when the fires came through at the end of 2019. She was it was New Year's night, New Year's Day that was the big fires in Australia, and she was out of her whole property where she was living on this sort of kind of community was taken out by the fires, but she wasn't there. And then again, when the floods hit just after our last conversation, and her area was flooded, she wasn't there again. It was interesting that she wasn't there.
Yeah.
And Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
So, comments. So I'm not watching the comments. Yeah. So also, if you don't want to be there, if you do listen to the impulses, if you don't want to be there, you will be guided to be somewhere else when something happens, right?
Yes,
If you don't want to
absolutely.
be
And the angels, I mean, it's been amazing. Like I was mentioning how like it was hard for me to wrap my head around miracles, but they have said that like there are those in the world who have a soul contract where they, like, we all know when our exit point is. We all know before we came. There are some people who will, who will during these experiences will leave at different times. And but there are many of us who are meant to stay, particularly people who are attracted to this kind of a show that you're doing here, that we're meant to stay and to help those to try to reach to higher states of consciousness. So if you happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, the angels literally said that they could work miracles, that they could do things to help us, to make us be safe. So like I think it's in that way. And the brighter our own consciousness gets, as we're being bombarded by all this crazy energy that's coming in right now from the sun and everything that's happening, as we are already being stretched into higher states, not the highest state, because that's coming with the great flash of light. The big one is still yet to come. But the moment they said that we will look back on and say that everything changed, that is still yet to come. But already things are shifting, and already they said that as we go through this, we will come to a time when an average person may be able to see angels. Like, and here's an interesting thing about that, Karen. So when they first told me that, I was like, wow, that'd be incredible. Could you imagine if a person had been an atheist and then all of a sudden they see an angel walking down the street? Like, what a paradigm shift that's going to be. Like, that's going to be incredible. And guess what they're going to need to do is they're going to be looking to listen to your radio show. They're going to be like, I need answers. They're going to be looking for light workers. They're going to be looking for help. Yeah. So that is that's a really, really fun thing, this idea. But so here's an interesting thing I learned about angels is that angels incarnate, but they incarnate into a light body. So very few angels have ever incarnated. Like, there's way more angels than there are humans, way, way, way more angels than humans. But there are some angels who have physically incarnated onto Earth. And some of them come in with us. Each of us, you I'm sure have heard, is each of us has a guardian angel who incarnates with us. But there are many other angels who have incarnated, and they incarnate into a light body, so we don't see them. But when you hear of people who see angels, those are the angels that they're seeing, the ones who are incarnated into light bodies. There's many, many more angels who never incarnate. They don't look like what we think of as an incarnated angels with the wings and all the stuff. That's an incarnated angel. The non-incarnated angels look more like I don't even know if they look like anything. They show themselves to me in different ways. Sometimes it's like a beam of light with kind of a geometric face, which just kind of sounds funky, but that's how they show themselves to me sometimes. But the incarnated angels, which are literally here to help guide us through the shift. And there will come a time when many people, I think, will be able to see them, and they will be able to give us practical help, which is wild to think about, and super exciting. Like, yes, thank you. I would like to see the angels around us.
Absolutely. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Lorna Byrne I had on the show.
Yes. She's one that can see them. Yeah.
I think I said to you at the beginning of the last show, like, the Angel Collective had contacted me and they said, we want you to put more people talking about angels on your show. And I thought to myself, oh, everyone talks about angels. I said, yeah, that'll be easy. But I sort of started looking, and I didn't really find so many people that really sort of channel or talk to the angels. And then you came on the show, and I thought we were going to have a nice conversation about how sweet how the angels help
harps and trumpets and right, yeah.
Which was not the conversation that we had. But I think it was Lorna and I were talking about exactly what you were saying. Like, in the future, there'll be a time where you'll be able to see the angels.
Yes.
And you'll like, I think it was her, she said that you can even say, do you mind just watching my child while I go to the shop?
Right. Could you imagine? I mean, like, how cool. That's like the best babysitter ever,
Yeah.
They're not going to get into your cookie stash.
Yeah, exactly. And I've shared this on the show. I might have even shared it on the last show, but my daughter, who was dead against a lot of this stuff because she just didn't want to know about it as a kid, in her 30s, she's much more into it. But even in her 20s, she's like, don't talk about all that woo-woo stuff. I don't want to know. She wanted to have a really mainstream life. and her healing was very much in rescue healing and allopathic healing. She didn't want to know about energy healing, but that's shifted. But when she's a kid, and she said to me things like, "Oh, I climbed up on the roof today, Mum," and I said, "What?"
Oh my
And
God.
she said, "Don't you believe the angels are looking after me?" Like she'd
Oh,
throw my words,
no.
throw my words back in my face. And this has gone so quickly. But let's go over a little bit of the earth changes that the angels spoke about.
Yes.
I want to talk about the light event because I've been looking out for it,
Yeah.
and there was all that light happening all over the world. Like, what do you call it? The Northern Lights was happening all
Yes,
over the
right?
world. Even people in Sydney said that they saw it, and I didn't
Yeah.
see it. And I'm thinking, is this it? Is this it? You know, like.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, tell us what the angels have said about earth changes.
Yeah, so they talked about, and by the way, so I don't know if you knew, Karen, that I compiled all of those messages about what's coming next in a book called What's Coming Next.
Oh
So,
yeah, I forgot.
so
I forgot to mention that.
yeah,
Here
so
we
if
go.
people
Here
are
we go. There's
curious.
the book. There we
Oh
go.
yeah,
What's
thank
coming
you.
next?
So it's on Amazon. And so if you want, and thank you, that's my first book, which is about how you manifest based on your soul type, manifesting things. So anyways, it's a beautiful book, but not the old way you think about manifesting. It is creating things that have never existed before, which is a totally different form of manifesting. So that's what this based on your soul type and fitting into the structure of creation. So
Nice,
super fun
nice.
book, but about
Yeah.
the book about, so anyways, if somebody wanted to go back, you can either go back in my YouTube channel and find the old messages, or this one is sort of your cheat sheet guide to all those messages about the events coming. But specifically the earth rift is the thing. It is the most exciting, I think, of all the things, because they basically say it is a great flash of light. And they say that they've given me more details about it over time, that they've gone back and talked about it, but they basically have said that it is a solar energy. Some people worry that it's nuclear or whatever. No, it's not like a nuclear bomb or anything like that. It's a solar energy. And they also have told me not that long ago, they told me that it comes from the same sun that we came from. So, and they said it will come, like they've never given, the angels don't really do dates. They're not big on dates. They live outside of time. They don't experience things the same way that we do. So they can kind of talk about probabilities. They will tell us when things are like absolutely certain to happen because we're just that close to them. And when all kind of the probabilities have collapsed to say this thing is coming. And the earth rift, I mean, not the earth, but the flash of light is one of those things. It's coming. And they said it will be in response to, like, as we are ready for it. So it will be emanated by the central sun. And they have said recently that we have kind of reached a tipping point. So it could be like, I have always just by looking at the astrology, I've always hoped that it would kind of be like second half of 2026, but that is totally not channeled. That is based on astrology and just looking for like, when would be a likely time? But it could be very soon. It could be in the further future. It will happen in my lifetime. I know that. But it is, so what they've described it as, they said that they've called it, oh my gosh, the words they've used at different times, that it's like rainbow starlight was one of the words they described it as. And they gave me a visual, because frequently they will communicate to me both through words and then also give me sort of a second track of visuals. And it looked like little sparkles, like sparks in the sky all around you. Like it would be almost like there was so much electricity in the air that things would just spark randomly around you. And it would be like rainbow, like stars everywhere. And that what happens with this, when this energy comes, is they said, don't worry if you happen to be like at the grocery store when this happened, just go home, like go home. Or if you're out traveling, go wherever you're staying. And then they said that it is an incredible moment of shifting our consciousness. And they said that the light will bring everybody kind of up to the threshold, but that it's always our choice. We always have free will, and it will be our choice as to whether we go through the door or not. And they said that it's available to absolutely everyone. It's not like it's only for the people who've been good and everybody else gets coal in their stocking. There's none of that. It's for everybody, anybody who is open to the energy. And the only way we will not receive the energy is if we are turning away from it. We turn away from it by trying to cling to the way that things were. So this gets back to the whole conversation about the place of stillness. Is that if we are stuck in the way things were, if we're still clinging to, say, for example, you're like, okay, yeah, I'm all for the shift in consciousness, but I've been working on getting, like, let's just say, like, oh, I've been in med school. I want to finish my medical degree. That's clinging to what was. Right. Oh, well, yeah, I'm all for this, except I want to make sure that my cat's okay. I want to go run and check on my cat. That's like, okay, wait, I'm waiting. I'm clinging. I'm leaning backwards. Like, trust your cat. They said the animals will be fine. They've said that children, we need to worry least about the children, that the children, they don't have any trust issues. They'll be good. They like the angels will be there. The kids will be like, fine. Same thing with like adults that you care for, like if you are a caregiver, excuse me, don't worry about the people you're taking care of. This is a very personal journey when this happens. But they said that what will happen is that that they said that tune out the outside world when this flash of light comes, because this place of stillness that we're talking about, it is the place of infinite potential. Anything can be created, and we will all be creating in that incredible space. So some of us are going to be creating things of beauty. Some people might be creating things of not beauty. So you don't want to be involved in that. Just shut the blinds, close the doors, and be in your own space. And then they said at a certain time, a certain point in our own progression through this energy, your body will get very, very heavy. All of a sudden, it'll feel like, oh my gosh, I need to just lay down. And they said, when that happens, lay down, lay down. And they said that is the process of you separating from your karma, that your karma feels heavy, like you're wearing a heavy suit. And they said that your frequency is raising. So you do not have to do a thing. You literally lay down and the angels will lift you. They will help you to separate from your karma and lift up. And so, which leads to a really interesting question is like, okay, well, if we're going to separate from our karma, then does that mean we're fully healed? Does that mean we can stop healing and we just wait for the flash of light to do it for us? And they have said no, unfortunately, that we actually want to really double down and work on our healing now, because they said we are currently living in this, what we've been calling our 3D reality, our current state of consciousness, which has been focused on learning about ourselves as a soul, like learning who we are from all these different experiences, all these different perspectives we've had. And think of that as like reading the book of our soul, that our soul has a story. The story is like, who am I when I am put in this circumstance or that life? Who am I? Who do I become? How does it change me? That's the book we've been reading. And those of us who have done a lot of healing, who are on this journey, you guys have read a lot of the book. Like you've been reading and reading and reading. People who haven't, there's still a lot of unread book. But by the time we get to this flash of light, what happens is we put the book down. And so that's beautiful. But what it means is we can no longer read the book. So you want to squeeze every last morsel you can get out of this state of consciousness now while we're here, which is why we now have access to the full Akashic records, which we never did before. You can now heal every past life you've ever had, because this is the time. Like now is the moment to heal. And then the flash of light comes, we put the book down, and we move into a new state of consciousness where the goal for humanity totally changes. The game changes. We are doing a totally different thing. We are no longer living a karmic experience. We instead are learning about ourselves as manifestors.
Yes.
And somebody mentioned the telepathy. That is one of the major things that happens is we become telepathic with the flash, which is so exciting. Right. So exciting.
Did you tune into the telepathy tape?
I listened to the woman who did it. I listened to her being interviewed, but I haven't listened to the whole tapes, but it was super, super intriguing. Like, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I was so excited because it went viral, not because she's talking about it, because I've heard it, I've heard it all before, but the fact that, Joe Rogan and everyone, like I reached out to Kai, the filmmaker who initiated it. And she said, love to come on your show. And then she just was bombarded with all the big guns. And so she pushed me aside,
Oh, no.
And that was fine, like I was like, like these people are reaching millions and millions of people. I want her on those shows. And then I got back to her a few months later and she said, things have calmed down. I'll come on your show now. But it's like its time has come. The telepathy out there in the mainstream. Something that you said, the time's going so fast, which I reiterated your words with someone who was really upset, someone that's in one of my Vision Keepers groups, that, there will be cataclysm in every part, like the money system will collapse. So if you're somebody that had saved for all your life to put your kids in college, and then all of a sudden, whatever financial structure collapses and you lose all your money, you said the energy that you put into the intent that you wanted a higher education for your children would still happen, even though the means that you thought was going to happen disappeared.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's a wonderful and encouraging message which is basically, it says it doesn't matter that they've told us about all these potential events. They said, keep investing in your life. That what is it that you want to create in your life? Keep working at creating that thing. And then,
Right.
yes, it's possible that it doesn't manifest the way you expected it because the world changes. But the fact is, you have been directing energy towards that outcome. So it will still resolve in whatever
Exactly.
the new form is. So it
Exactly.
is keep doing all the things you're doing, right? Keep
Yeah.
investing in your life, investing in your kids, investing in whatever it is that where you want to direct your life into meaningful avenues of
Yeah.
expressing who you are. Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of when when everything falls apart, throwing your hands up in the air and saying, "Oh my God, life's terrible." And so this friend of mine had invested a lot of time and money in developing some new thing for healing. I don't know. He didn't go into what it was, but the people he was doing it with, they pulled out and it all collapsed. So he'd put all this time and money and effort, like a year or two, into this project that didn't happen. And I saw him just after the collapse of that, and he was really depressed about it. And
Yeah.
so I, and Tucker with me again, I said, I had this lady on the show. And this is what she said. And he was really comforted from that. Like, he was really
Oh,
comforted that all that effort that he'd put into this project that collapsed wasn't wasted, that the
I
intent is
love
still
that.
there, and that it will manifest in another way. It'll come. And
Yeah.
that often happens. I've seen that in my life so many times.
Yeah.
When you don't get something like the house I wanted, or the job I wanted, or this I wanted, it comes back to you in other ways, just unexpected. You call it miracles if you like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in unexpected ways. But it's there. Like Esther would say, it's in your vibrational escrow. And when you get
Yes.
to a place of allowing, or a place of stillness, or a place of acceptance, you allow that manifestation of that intention, regardless of how that happens. Like,
Yeah.
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 So yeah, I
I
thought that was
totally agree. And it is it is about us, and like Esther Hicks always says, coming into alignment with the things that we
right.
want. But it is a process of understanding that once you set your sights on something that you would like to create for yourself, then sometimes the first thing that happens is you get shown an obstacle. And all that means is you're on the right track, right? If all of a sudden something jumps up and says, "Oh, you know what? Here's something in your way." They're only showing you that because you've committed to doing it. And now they're going to show you, here's the things you need to resolve so that you can have the thing you want to have, or do the thing you want to do. We're going to show it to you quick. We're going to show it to you fail fast so that you can move past that and actually do or be or whatever you want. Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of beautiful messages. Sorry, I haven't been getting to. It's like a multitasking, putting on this show, reading your messages, listening to Anne, talking to my guides. It's all going on. But Shelley says here, well, thank you, Anne, for being here today, for sharing your hopeful messages
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank
for
you so
our
much.
world. And there was a few questions that I've missed. Sorry, I've missed your question. Is there anything, Vladdy says, is there anything the angels want to share with us right now? Oh, okay, Vladdy, you want the angels coming through? Maybe says, this was an amazing combo. Thank you both so much. Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes to go, I think. Yeah. So I think Vladdy wants you to channel the angels. Is there anything that the angels are knocking on? Okay, well, I'm talking to my mob, and they said, have you been listening to the show? We've been sharing messages with you.
Yes.
But is there anything pressing you think the angels want to say to us?
Oh my gosh. I would say the thing that has been like the most pressing message that they have been focusing on most recently has been they've been talking to me a lot about the idea of our own sense of our sense of identity. Been using the metaphor for me to understand unity consciousness, and talking to me
Yeah.
about what is it to actually move, because we all been hearing this is where we're heading. We're heading towards unity consciousness. But what does that mean exactly? Especially in a world where we're used to privacy, right? We're used to having like the doors closed and this is who I am on the inside. Are we really ready? Are we ready for unity consciousness? And what does it mean? And they've been showing me the example of starlings flying together. That, like, if you look at a wave of starlings, there's those birds that move in unison, when they fly like a cloud all together. And you can see it in schools of fish, like sardines, or these little minnows in the sea, or I think they're sardines, but they do the same thing, as they flow together. And so, as if they are one organism. But what's magic about that, if you're watching them, is that you'll notice that it's almost like they maintain a space bubble around every single one. That it's like, okay, I've got my space bubble, like a little, a little sardine is in there saying, okay, I've got my inch of space around me. And somehow they maintain that as the entire fluidity of this of the being, the overall being of the whole group moves around in unison. So what we learn from this, what we take from this, is the idea that we have to learn how to be energetically in our own space. And humans are really bad at that. Is that what we are doing right now? What we're doing right now is that we are a bunch of loud voices fighting over what reality should be. And we are projecting our ideas about what reality should be onto each other. And so that is not staying in our 1 inch. that is saying, hey, I'm projecting my wound onto you and you're projecting your wound onto me. So like, for example, when we enter into a relationship, we have our ideas, we have our wounds, and then we play out those wounds on one another, and we are doing anything but staying in our energetically neutral space. We're overlapping our wounds onto the other person. We're saying, I think you should behave this way, or I think you should change who you are to be more the way I think things should be. So when we get to unity consciousness, it will be the state where we are able to say, this is who I am. This is what I feel. My feelings are valid. I am witnessed by all the people around me, and I respect their way of being. And I'm able to allow them to be who they are. And I will not take that on as wounding about me. And they will not take on my way of being as wounding about them. And that allows us to all flow together as the pack of starlings, right? That it's and I think that's healing, like getting to the space where we are really at peace with who we are. We're no longer looking for validation or fighting for that inner hole inside of us to be filled by something outside of ourselves, because that is what drives us to bump into our neighbor as we're trying to create unity. And so our reality right now is a big jumbled mess. Our reality right now is a bunch of starlings all fighting over who's in control.
Yeah.
And that is our current state of consciousness. And so that
Absolutely.
is the message, the conversation I've been having with them most recently. I think it's the most interesting thing at the moment happening in the conversation with the angels, is really trying to help us understand. We all think we want unity consciousness, but we have to grow into it. That growth is, we're going to get the help. We're going to get the great big boost up from the flash of light. It's going to help us. And they've said it'll be like all of a sudden we have a spiritual perspective on the things that we used to be really stuck in. All of a sudden we will see it with fresh eyes. So we will get the help we need.
Yeah, absolutely. And this speaks to the, like the earth changes too. When I speak to people who have been in the floods in Australia, and because a lot of communities that I know, people that live in those communities, I've said, what's happening up there, what's going on, and the overwhelming message is everyone's coming together and working together to help each other.
Yes.
And so, that you can live in a suburb all your life and just think about your world and your life and what you need, and and then some cataclysm, and now you're thinking about your neighbor and everybody else. And so it's sort of like is pushing you into that collective consciousness, that unity consciousness. And the telepathy tape, the kids that are
so
on the
amazing. Yeah,
I mean, they're already living in it telepathically, living in that collective consciousness that you. And when I talk to my galactic mob, the galactic guides, that's what they say, that humanity is so focused on their wants and their needs in a very selfish, in a very like, what do I need to get in order to feel good, instead of feeling good and then saying, what can I give that's going to benefit the whole? Like it's a total shift in consciousness. Like how can I manifest my reality, the house and the lover and the money and the success, so that I could feel good about my life, and people will look at me and say, oh, aren't you amazing? That whole Hollywood stardom energy. Like, look at the Diddy stuff. I just can't believe how much stuff is out there about the Diddy stuff, but it's sort of highlighting that selfishness of fame and drugs and sex and abortion of that selfish living. And like, we've just got to move into like more collective consciousness, like feel good, like connect to your source, and then reach out to like be a part of a collective conscious, like a whole. Yeah, unity.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's like when we see those behaviors that are so really what I would call antisocial behaviors, really harmful behaviors that are harmful to others and to yourself, when we see that playing out in the world stage, like I think it comes from that space of really trying to fill a wound and only having sort of one, like it's we're in avoidance, right, of what's actually happening inside of us. We're trying to fill the wound from the outside and nothing ever fills it. And so it's like constantly trying
Right.
to go to greater and greater and greater extremes, hoping that it's going to fill the wound. That
Right.
at the core, like at the core, that person needs to be witnessed, needs to be loved into wholeness. You know, it's like they are, the angels have said over and over again that even the darkest heart, there is no place that there isn't the light. They said something so beautiful to me the other day. They were showing me, and they actually said, okay, if you're afraid of being alone, if you're afraid of really being by yourself, of being without anybody, of being where is the darkest, darkest, darkest place you could be? Where is that? And so they took me there. They said, okay, let's show you. And they
Whoa.
brought me into this darkest, darkest, darkest space I could imagine. It was like going down into a hole. And I got out in the very, very center. I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, I'm all right. I'm okay. I'm in the darkest place I can imagine, and I'm okay. And they were showing me that I am the light. Like here I am, I'm the light. And I can be in the darkest, darkest, darkest space. And this is where we go when we're in our dark night of the soul. This is where we go when there's those people that you see in the public world doing horrible things. They're in this darkest, darkest, darkest place. And they may have calloused all of their openings to the light, right? They may be so wounded that they have closed off any access for any love to get in. But then here's what they showed me, which was so amazing, is they said, okay, now reach out and touch someone and recognize what happens when two people connect. What happens is you create the light. So what is the light? The light is actually when two hearts touch. So we all are the light, but we cannot create the light alone. We can only create it when we connect with another person. So for the people who are deeply alone, who are in that place where you're like, how could that person do that horrible thing? You will see them sometimes going out, and you'll see people who haven't, like, that are really antisocial, that have road rage, right? That blow up at someone. All they're trying to do is, it may be negative behavior, but it's a moment of connection. It is maybe a tiny glimmer of the light, but in that moment, they have created just a little bit light. You know, they're craving the light, but they're afraid to let it in. And so it's just, I think it's so important to remember that even in the darkest, darkest heart is the light. They're still the light. They don't know how to create the light anymore. And that sadness, right? The loneliness of that, like not being able to let in, the love's all around them. All they got to do is reach out to one other soul, but they can't let it in. And so it's just, I think it's just the compassion to feel when we hear about people like that are on a pathway of self-destruction, and to recognize where they are, and that they have all that light inside of them, but it's locked up, right? It's locked up like stuffing your money in a mattress and it does you no good. You know what I mean? It's locked up in there. And all they got to do is connect with another person. And the more, that's why when we get into groups, right? That's why the light gets, that's why I love doing retreats, is because you get all those people in a room and everybody's open, and it's like you're creating so much light. It's incredible, incredible. That's one of my favorite things. So, but yeah, it was really a beautiful, beautiful thing to be shown, and to really understand, like, why is it that people do such horrible things? Is they're in a dark, dark place, and they're trying so hard to create even the tiniest bit of light, and they don't know how to do it. And they're doing it in the wrong ways. They're doing it in hurtful ways, you know, but yeah.
Oh, darling one. It's been such an awesome and wonderful and enlightening conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been fantastic, Karen. Thank you so much.
I said, you've been on my mind a lot in the last year and a half since we last spoke. Your words keep coming back, and and I've got access to my own mob who have equally as profound words that blow me away with what they say, and have changed my life, and I've had many miracles. But you keep coming back, and and I tell people about you all the time, and I know
thank you.
Quite a few people in my group have been listening to all your messages, and you've got a lot of love happening online here. I can feel the amazing circle of energy. Heidi says, lots of I keep hitting the wrong thing. Thank you. Susan says, thank you, Anna and Karen. Yeah,
Awesome.
Lots of people saying thank you, Kristen. Hey, darling one, Kristen says here, love this conversation. Me too, Kristen. It was so good. I'm going to go and listen to it all over again, even though I've been involved in the conversation. I've loved it. There's so many pearls of wisdom that we've come up with that are like, oh, that needs to be hammered in, because you can hear this, you can hear it and go, oh, yes, I agree. But sometimes, like repetition, sometimes you need to just hear it over and over and over and over and over again for it to really embody and sink in. But all is well, and whatever is going to happen, like Jim Carrey in the Truman Show, bring it on.
Bring it on. That's right.
Bring it on. We are the light. We know how to handle it. Thank you so much. And Ann Tucker is AnnTucker.com for people listening who want to check her out. And I've got all the links on my webpage of her YouTube channel, Instagram, and all that she's got going on if you want to find out more about Ann. Thank you so much, darling one.
Thank you very, very much, Karen.
And thanks for everybody listening today. It's been beautiful to see all your comments and all your love online. And I've got to go. Big love to all of you. If you want to reach out to me, go to karenswain.com and send me a message. Love you all. Bye for now.